I wanted to take a couple of minutes and talk about the final construction of the business plans you're preparing. This is something that we've discussed in many of our individual or team meetings, but I'm getting quite a few questions about this still and wanted to take a few minutes with you just to make sure that everyone had access to the same information. You'll recall me discussing that we're not using LivePlan for the financial narrative or to display the cash flow projections. Rather, we're using the cash flow projections that you've put together through your cash flow modeling tool in Excel. As you prepare to put together the various elements of this plan, you'll use LivePlan to take or to deal with the qualitative elements, the marketing plan, the competition, the advisor group, the management team, talking about the narrative of the company as a whole. What do they do? What's the vision? What's the plan? What's the mission? This is where you unveil everything, and you've got a lot of material here, most of which I'm hoping you already have in LivePlan, some of which you probably still need to put there or need to flesh out as you go from LivePlan to an MS Word document that I'll discuss again in a moment. So you'll use LivePlan to put in all of these elements. You gathered material from your initial search online, from IBIS World Report, from BizMiner, from Data Axle. You've spoken to your client. You've talked repeatedly to me about the companies, and you've looked at the marketplace. So there's a tremendous amount of information that you have at your disposal, some of which is textual, some of which is graphic, and that all of that should be going into your qualitative parts of the plan. Now, remember that qualitative doesn't mean that it's void of numbers. It's just not including the financials of the company. It might have numbers with respect to the market, the industry, the economy, competitors. It's just that it's void of the quantitative elements that are represented in the financial documents, income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statement of your client, both historic and in the projections that we're doing the forecasts. So you'll take all of this, put it into LivePlan, and then you'll output from LivePlan into an MS Word document. You can do that by going into LivePlan, selecting the print icon, and you'll find that you can either print to a printer or you can print, quote, output to a PDF or to MS Word. And you'll need to do this to MS Word. Separately, you're going to create an entirely different MS Word document that is the financial narrative and then represents the elements of the financial forecast that you've done. This document will start off with a narrative. And in this narrative, you're going to talk about the company financially, where it's been, what its trajectory has been like, where you got the information you got. If you received income statements and balance sheets, you'll talk about receiving those. You'll talk about how you needed to work those or sometimes rework those in order to fit them into this plan that we have. You'll discuss also having to compress the lines of expenses or the lines of revenue or the different payables or the debts and such to get them into a manageable form where you only have 6 or 7 operating expense lines, a couple of lines of revenue, a couple of cost of goods sold lines, a couple of payables and assets and such. So you got something workable here. So you'll put all of that together. You'll talk about then the historical trajectories or patterns that you're beginning to see. You'll also take a look at some what the management or ownership has told you in terms of their assumptions. And together, you'll then put together the assumptions panel, which is the assumptions that are the byproduct of the historical, the trajectories, what the client is telling you, what you're coming up with on your own. At this point, you've gone through and detailed your assumptions pretty carefully. You need to include those in this narrative. And then you'll go ahead and indicate that given all this information and these assumptions, here is an assumptions panel. And you'll literally snapshot that from your cash flow model that we've been working on. So the assumptions panel of the cash flow model. You'll then give a little paragraph or so where you're discussing with these assumptions applied then to the historical financials. You've then gone ahead and created this cash flow or these income statements and balance sheet projections, at which point you'll snapshot the income statement and you'll snapshot the balance sheet projections. You'll then give another little paragraph that indicates that given that cash flow is the result of cash flow from operations, income and balance sheet items, of course, cash flow from investing, all from the balance sheet, and cash flow from financing, again, all from the balance sheet, that you've put together these cash flow projections. Remember that the income statement and the balance sheet together create the cash flow statement. So you'll put together that paragraph, you'll then snapshot the cash flow statement, and you'll copy it into the item. You'll paste it into the item, the document you're working on. Now you'll be ready to make some conclusion comments about this process leading from the financial narrative that you started with all the way down to the cash flows that you're observing. You might talk about them paying off debt. You may talk about them needing to raise equity capital. You may talk about someone that's taking excessive distributions or someone that needs to start paying themselves through the income statement. You know, depending upon what all of this shows you will determine what you're going to discuss there. You'll now have these two documents, the MS Word document and the financial document, or excuse me, the MS Word document that is the qualitative plan, material out of LivePlan, and then this financial and financial narrative document. In one or the other of these, there should be lots of graphics, especially with the financials. You can put together bar charts or stacked bars or line charts where you're evidencing the growth of cash flow over time, the growth of various expenses over time. You can put percent changes. There's so much you can do with this. So think about how would you best illustrate this to someone? You are telling a story. And by the way, it's a story that's designed to not only describe the company well, captivate whomever is reading it, but also show those elements that you've learned in the years that you've been in this system, in our business school, and present those to me so I can give you a grade for this class, of course. So you have these two different documents. You're now going to put them together into one, and then you're going to realize that what you've just done is create an essay on the company. You've got your executive summary, which is like the introduction. You've got these many pages. In most cases, the ones I've seen already are 15 to 25 pages of just inputs in the body of the discussion, in addition to some of the summary at the beginning. You've got all of this information. Now bring it to a conclusion. Spend a few pages talking about the connective elements, give recommendations, make comments about what needs to be followed through on. Go ahead and, like any good conclusion, tell us what you've told us, but do so in a way that helps me understand that you understand the elements that you've been working with. You then will go ahead and save that to an MS Word document. That is the business plan. Oh, it should have a cover page, of course. It should have a table of content, of course. It needs to be spelled correctly. The grammar needs to be proper. I'm going to be picky about all of these things. This is an item that you're using to communicate something to others that are outside of the work that we've been doing together. So do it well. As I've indicated in a couple of the WhatsApp posts earlier today, you're going to schedule a time with me over the next week during which you're going to discuss the business plan you put together, what's in it, why it's there, what you're thinking about this, how you constructed all of this, as well as talk about the narratives, the financials, the marketing plans, everything. And you'll take about half an hour to do that, each of you. After that, or at the end of that, we'll determine whether you're sending this to the client or whether I am, or I am. And then that'll wrap up the course for you, or at least for the business plan portions of this for you. Some of you are going on and doing a little bit of valuation work. Well, I hope this helps.